much for joining us today. We are very happy to have everybody here. It's going to be a fruitful discussion, nonetheless, with myself and Ed. So this is Compliance Without the Chaos. This is series number 2. Ed and I were here in these very seats about a week or two ago and had this discussion with a few other business leaders, and we're really excited to have it again with you guys. I am Eric Levitas. I am the VP of Business Development here at ControlCase. We do everything audit and certification, anything you could think of, any acronym you could think of. We are the big bad boss at the end of it. The idea of the webinar today is to really work through, why is Ed and I here? I'm this auditor. I'll let Ed introduce himself. He's a MSSP. Why do we need to have this discussion together? And why do you guys need, what is the point of listening and forming this team around yourself, myself, and Ed? So if we could jump to the next slide, Ned, if you can introduce yourself, we can get started.
Sure, I'll be happy to. I'm Ed Correa. I'm the president and founder of Sagacent Technologies. And Sagacent is a recognized global leader in IT management, cybersecurity, and compliance. In fact, we're rated 43 in the world. We specialize in helping organizations in highly regulated industries reduce cyber risks and simplify compliance, saving you time, money, and stress.
Awesome. So if we could jump to the next slide, I'm going to just do a quick overview of what Ed and I are going to talk about. And I think one thing we really want to focus on today is, we can get pretty granular about this stuff, but we really want to focus at a higher level. Like, from a business owner perspective, what are you focused on? Why are you making these buying decisions? How do you make these timeline decisions based on your RFPs or your client needs or whoever's asking for it? How do you, as the business leader, make a decision to ultimately push down to your IT leaders and those who work down the supply chain from there? How do you know what framework to go after? Why? What's required to go down these steps? What money do you have to invest? How do you invest that money? And then ultimately, why are we here, right? It's like, again, why are Ed and I on this discussion together and having this discussion with you guys? Because it is important to make sure you build your team. You are a part of that team. I am a part of that team. Ed is a part of that team. And making sure all the pieces of the puzzle fit together, that's how you frame it and put it on your wall, and you have a beautiful piece of artwork. So if we could jump to the next slide, and Ed, I believe this one is you. Let's
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think Eric said it several times. Why are we here? As a managed service provider, we like to help regulated businesses in many different ways, but often we need a compliance audit company like ControlCase to come in and help. We're both here to provide you with answers today, and we're going to outline some of the secret sauce, exactly how we go about addressing these things. But we want to answer your compliance questions. We want to rid you of frustrations. We realize that there are a lot of misconceptions around regulations and compliance and how it gets done, and by whom. Today's webinar will be specifically for those business leaders who have the 800-pound gorilla on their back. They've got to demonstrate compliance, but how do you go about doing it? And very often the biggest mistake I see is the assumption that our IT people are ready to tackle this. Very often, without specific training or an experience doing this, it can be a recipe for disaster. So let's go to the next slide. So first question, or first thing I want to make clear here is, what are frameworks? A framework is in cybersecurity and compliance is a set of standards. They're guidelines, they're best practices. They explain how organizations can use best-in-class managed security, protected data, and demonstrate trust to the people that are looking for those compliance regs. They tell you what needs to be done, what needs to be in place, the controls, the policy, the processes. They often don't dictate exactly how you get there. So that leaves room in organizations to adapt because of their size, their industry, and the risk. But it also means that most organizations kind of stumble at the beginning, and they're going, well, we see where we are now, we see where we need to get to. What's the process for getting there? And we hope to outline that today. Some frameworks are voluntary adapted from best practices and client assurances, while others are mandatory, requiring regulators or objective third parties to come in and demonstrate and attest to the fact that you're compliant. Bottom line, frameworks serve two main purposes. They reduce risks by ensuring that organizations address the most common security threats, and they build trust with organizations. They are a recognized yardstick that clients, partners, and regulators and investors understand. Any comments on that, Eric?
Yeah, and it's a very timely discussion. I actually just got off the phone with a business owner making this decision, right? They're saying, I think I need X framework. And my first question was, who's asking for this? Well, we have a very large client. That large client says we need this, or this, right? But I don't know which is best for me. I've got X guy here with me who's going to support me in doing it. But as a business owner, I need to make it. How much is this going to cost? Is this the right standard for me? Will I gain more client base? Will I suffice the requirement for my current client? Do I need to end the relationship with the client? Who's paying for it? Are they paying for it? Am I paying for it? How am I billing it? Is it amortized? Is it not? So it was a very interesting discussion, because when I have these discussions with IT leaders, it's very much like, okay, how much work is it going to take? And what are the different controls? And how long is this going to take? But from a business owner perspective, I think the conversation first needs to start with who and how, and then you need to then build that right team, at which will reduce risk and which will build trust. Because if you do not build the interesting part of that discussion is we first said, look, I was made the introduction through an MSP respectfully. Let's see if that MSP has the capability to do that. And if they don't, let me help you make a connected introduction to somebody like an Ed that can actually support you in getting you ready. Because it's, again, I'm the bad boss at the end of the rainbow. You need to prepare, and you can't leave your IT person on an island. Your IT person, your IT team, whoever you're paying to do this, needs to be given the right resources. Because again, if worst case scenarios, they get to our door and we go, well, what type do you want, or do you have this document? They're like, what's that? I'm like, well, we can't start anything. So all this money you've spent, all these expectations you've given your clients, they're meaningless now. So again, from an expectation perspective, I think making sure you have those questions answered, and that last bucket, reduce risk, build trust, you have to make monetary investments to do that, but do it right the first time, so you're not pigeonholing yourself into the wrong transition, or the wrong framework, or the wrong best practices. So Ed, I didn't know if you had any.
Yeah, I do. I'm going to do a brief analogy. If you were hoping to do a home remodel, you wouldn't expect that everybody you'd reach out to who knows how to hold a hammer is probably a good choice. I just did a big remodel here at my home from 23 to 24. And I went through a lot of contractors, interviewing them and checking their skill sets. IT is a very varied industry. Different people have different talents. And you can't just assume because somebody has some familiarity with technology that they understand regulatory compliance. It's a specialty, and they have to be experienced. So again, going back to the analogy on the remodel, you wouldn't expect a general handyman to be able to add a room onto your home. Regulatory compliance and getting certifications is very similar. You need specialists.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, let's jump to the next slide. I think that's a great analogy. And again, just to, as we're doing this, and as you jump into the slide, folks have to remember, like, some people are really good at some frameworks and some aren't, and that's okay. But making sure you ask the right questions to the team you're going to build, that you can invest properly. I don't believe the right answer is we could figure it out. Again, to your analogy, I'll make sure I figure out the right wood or drywall or paint, and try to find some guys and figure it out from there. Like, it's just not the right path forward. So Ed, like, we talked a lot about this slide before, but like, this is one of my favorite slides. Talk to me a little bit about.
Well, thank you. To me, again, this is a little complex, so I put this together. It's a little 2x2 chart to outline the four major categories of compliance standards. So I've got the first column, self-attested internal validation things in a column. I've got a secondary column here, third party certified. That's that objective third party group that is required to meet the full requirements of that regulation. Then I've got rows where voluntary best practice that you could choose to do those on that row yourself. And then the final row at the bottom, the legally contractual mandated that you comply. So it's important to understand, depending on what you're trying to do, which of those four quadrants it's going to fall into, and what are the frameworks that are going to fit that regulatory compliance, and who you're going to need to lean on. Can you do it internally, or are you going to need it outside? Let's talk about CIS controls version 8.1. That's pretty important. These are the baseline suggestions, the minimum standards for any client to work with us. I don't want to have a business being a risk for my company. I also want to demonstrate that we always follow the best practices. So for clients that are not mandated to follow something else, we use CIS version 8.1. Now, for any business that really wants to get a hold on their security and reduce their risk, that's a great choice. And you could choose to do it yourself. That's in that quadrant one. Conversely, if we went diagonally down to that fourth quadrant, you'll see CMMC, PCI DSS, FedRAMP, etc. Those are going to be the things that are heavily regulated in the way it has to be done and what is needed to demonstrate compliance. Eric, could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to note, I didn't say it before, please ask questions during this up in the chat feature or the questions feature. Ed and I want to answer these in real time. So as we talk through some of these things, if you see an acronym you don't understand or something that you're actively dealing with, ask. We love dealing with real time scenarios. So yeah, look, again, it's like it's odd timing because I'm having these discussions. Who's asking for it? All right, we have a vendor. They asked us to be SOC 2. What does that mean? That means you need to see a third party auditor. You got to get ready and somebody needs to attest that you are doing that right. Oh, we just want basic cybersecurity. We just want to make sure we're doing the healthy things, but nobody's asking for it. What should we do? Well, hey, maybe a self-assessment might be the best option. NIST CSF, CIS 853, at the end of the day, you're validating, are you doing things correctly? Somebody like myself isn't going to come in. You would work with somebody like Ed to validate controls and just continuously upkeep your cybersecurity. And then as you work your way down to the bottom columns, like CMMC and PCI and FedRAMP. I mean, if you don't, first off, in CMMC, there's only 80 approved companies out there, right? So if you're a DoD contractor, better get in line now because we are getting busier and busier and busier. But those are certifications that are, if you handle certain information, you have to go through a third party to even bid on contracts, right? PCI, you've got to work with, your issuing bank can destroy you if you don't do things right. HIPAA, everybody thinks HIPAA is like, oh, I'm good, I'm fine. How many people handle PHI? Most people. How many people are HIPAA compliant? Not many people, right? So like making sure, again, from a business owner perspective, do you know your path forward? Is it self-attestation or not? Do you need a third party or not? Will you lose a contract if you have it or not? Making those decisions and kind of having, you ever seen those books that are like, turn to page 5, same idea. You want to know your full cost to completion. That cost includes a readiness partner, tools and technologies, possibly an audit partner, and then figuring out what audit frequency is that audit? Is this an annual audit? Will I always be in an audit cycle? Is this a triannual audit cycle? So again, from a business owner perspective, having all of your costs laid out on the table, making the appropriate decision, putting the appropriate timelines in place, and knowing, hey, this SOC journey, ISO journey, XYZ might be a 9-month engagement just to get to certification. And then that certification is a 6-month journey to get that cert. I better start planning, budgeting, now if I think I need this for then, rather than last minute saying, uh-oh, I'm going to lose this client. So again, I think from a business owner perspective, really planning timeline and budget and having the full picture. Again, that's why Ed and I are here. I want you to make a good decision when you've talked to both of us and have understood your full capacity. of what that
Eric,
looks
if
like.
I can throw one more comment in. So again, going back to the cybersecurity frameworks that are matched to the compliance standard, it takes time to master these. For example, that CIS version 8.1 is only 153 things you have to have just so in your organization. However, another framework is NIST 800.171, which is the backbone of many of these other, especially mandated compliance regs. It's over 1,000 things. Now, Eric was just talking about the journey of getting compliance. If you need to demonstrate compliance quickly, the time to get familiar with a framework that you've never looked at before, you may not have the time to do that. It takes time. It's taken most of my engineers years to get really competent and understand those requirements and how to find them within an organization. But this is part of the lesson that we want to make simple for you so you can understand. Eric, I think we're ready for the next slide or set of slides if you are.
Yeah, please. So I don't want to necessarily dive too deep into these frameworks. And again, Ed and I are on our version 2 of this discussion. We did dive pretty deeply. I think I want to focus more at a high level here, right? Why are you adhering to these controls? And what is the right path forward? So again, it's like such a timely discussion. A lot of my discussions today and yesterday have been with business owners, and the business owners are very much coming to me with their IT people right next to them, saying, "Okay, I've been told I need to be compliant by X entity. And by that X entity has given me a handful of options. And I'm sure we've all seen it. Ideally, we want to make sure that you can get in and get out with the right framework so that you can retain your right client. I see there's a question about FedRAMP. We're going to get to that. That's the Mac Daddy of everything. So that could be an entire discussion, but I want to focus on this for right now because it does lead into the discussion on FedRAMP, and we'll have that discussion about that. SOC 2 is a US recognized standard, right? So like if you're IT company, or if you're like a few companies today, they had a professional services that wrapped around a technology company that they were dealing with certain agencies or certain entities in the US. SOC 2 is way more recognized. Whereas ISO, if you have an international presence, it's way more recognized internationally. Or if you're doing business with the department, with the government, it's a point system. ISO is typically a point system that if you have a certain ISO standard, you get points. Those points will dictate if you win those contracts or not. The biggest thing I want to take away from this is that these take time, and there's the right path and the wrong path to take. Again, with SOC 2, there's a type 1 and a type 2 option. Well, which is best for you? Well, again, it always comes back to who's asking for it and how quickly are they asking for it. That dictates type 1 or type 2. For ISO, figuring out, how quickly you need to work down this 3-year cycle and figure out, how do I build my ISMS? And you might say, what is that? Exactly. You need to know somebody that can build this thing for you, because from an audit perspective, I can kind of weed people out pretty quickly when I say, hey, you want to get ISO? Tell me about your ISMS. And they go, what's that? You can't start the assessment without that, right? So the biggest thing I want to take from these upcoming slides, and especially these SOC and ISO frameworks, you look down at the bottom, but timeline, budget, 6 to 9 months minimum, 50 to 150K minimum. But again, these are all encompassing costs. These are audit costs, technology costs, your internal people costs from a partner like Ed, costs from different entities that are going to, again, your goal is to build your team. What are the total costs to completion? And then how often do I need to do this? Is this a month? Is this a yearly reoccurring thing? SOC is every year. ISO is a big audit, little audit, little audit, big audit, little audit, but it's a forever cycle if you want to keep up with the standard. So for something like a SOC 2 and ISO, it is so dependent on who's asking for it, how quickly do you need it, and what specifically are you looking to get out of these standards to adhere with whatever client you're trying to support. And some of these clients will very clearly state, I need to see this. I want to make sure you have this by X time, or no bueno. And for these two standards, any feedback, any comments, any real world examples you can give?
Well, we often deal with the ISO 27001 for manufacturing, and we haven't gone out and met a manufacturer yet that was compliant with this at the get-go. Very often, we'll come in, We'll look at things, we'll run an assessment on the organization, we'll come up with a gap list. And they are, well, every one of them was astounded to find out how much work needed to be done so that they could get to the end to be certified. Again, this can be a slog. It's a lot of work, but the sooner you get in there and you start identifying where are the gaps, what needs to be fixed, get them fixed, and then get the statements that are required all together so that you can get that certification. That's required. I mean, that's really important.
Yeah. Let's jump to the next slide because I think we can address the FedRAMP discussion here. So these are more, again, hammer down on you type of frameworks. You want to do business with the Department of Defense at any capacity, you need to be CMMC compliant. There's 3 levels. You handle certain information, that contract deems that you handle that information. They tell you which level of CMMC compliance you have, which there are 3. If you don't have that certification, or if you don't have that standard met at that point, you're not winning that contract. It is literally a go, no go decision. So in the vein of that discussion, right? So if you are a defense contractor doing business with the Department of Defense at any capacity, you need to be CMMC compliant. If you handle what's called FCI, Federal Contract Information, which is a contract, you're able to be level 1 compliant. It's a self-assessment. Again, a lot easier to get to the finish line. Where the issue happens, and this is where FedRAMP comes into play to an extent, there's something called CUI, Controlled Unclassified Information, right? You handle CUI, you need to come find me. You need to go through a C3PAO. But to find me, to even start down my path, I'm going to start to, do you have your SSP? Don't know what that is. That's a problem. It's the set of documentation that outlines all of your policies and procedures, your network topography, your data flow. Again, all these decisions need to have been made months and months and months ago, and IT purchases need to be made months and months and months ago to ultimately build your program, to even find your way to me. And I am the bearer of good or bad news to allow you to continue to bid on that contract. In the FedRAMP world, so FedRAMP is used in 2 instances. If you are a cloud service provider, and you're a cloud instance and you want to try to sell to the government, most of the time they're going to say you need to be FedRAMP, and the path to get FedRAMP compliant is a lot, right? You're going to have to find a sponsoring agency. That agency needs to sponsor you and essentially assume risk on your behalf. That'll say, hey, I'm going to put my name on them. I'm going to let them go down this FedRAMP path. You need to then get compliant, right? Ed talked about CMMC having all these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of line items. FedRAMP is even bigger, right? FedRAMP is based in what's called 853. 853 is just this mega standard. With FedRAMP compliance, third-party validation, again, you need to come find me. You cannot become FedRAMP compliant on your own. You have to go through a third party. So now you're paying somebody to get ready. You're paying someone to work down this, right? You're implementing and buying new tools that are FedRAMP compliant. Because again, if I had to put them on like a bar chart, CMMC and FedRAMP are the most strict. PCI, HIPAA, SOC 2, ISO are less strict, but still strict in their own right. CMMC and FedRAMP, they're different animals. FedRAMP is even its different animal. Now, there's also a different version of FedRAMP called FedRAMP equivalency. So let's say you can't find a sponsoring agency and your end market is not the government. It's selling into the CMMC market. Well, the CMMC market says if you have any cloud providers that store, process, or transmit CUI, so you will either know if you do that or don't, because your marketing, your sales, your business engine is going to say, are we the tool that stores, processes, or transmits CUI, or are we not? And there's a clear distinction. There's no such thing as maybe. Sometimes you do it once, kind of. You store, process, or transmit CUI. You also have a path forward called FedRAMP moderate equivalency. It is just as grueling, if not more grueling. And the idea behind FedRAMP moderate equivalency is you still need to go through a third party. You still need to validate your controls. But at the end of that assessment, because you don't have a sponsoring agency to assume risk for you, you have to get a 100% on that test. You need to fully comply with, and every year you need to go full for an annual attestation for both FedRAMP and FedRAMP moderate ATO. So again, when you go down the FedRAMP path, there's a readiness journey, there's a technology journey. You ultimately need to get assessed by a 3PAO, which is us, and then every year you need to come back. So, whoever asked the question, I would very much implore you like to reach out to us, or we'll reach out to you, because it is essential to align yourself to the right partner, spend money into the correct fashion, find yourself into a queue of a C3PAO or a 3PAO, depending if you're going FedRAMP or C3PA or CMMC. We are booking months and months and months out. So from an ownership perspective, you need to be making decisions 6 to 8 months in advance to prepare for an audit a year from now. Right. So again, and I want to, I appreciate the question about FedRAMP, because it is grueling, but it is very, when you get FedRAMP compliant, there is a monetary gain that happens. You're able to sell to the government. You're able to sell, you're able to offer your product at a premium, because FedRAMP compliancy is a premium offering, especially in the CMMC infrastructure. Folks are spending more money to be in FedRAMP approved environments or use FedRAMP approved tools. It makes their lives easier. It makes their stress less, and it ultimately makes the path to compliancy way less resistant. Ed, do you have any thoughts on FedRAMP as a whole or CMMC to add to that?
No, it's just, well, you painted the picture well about how long the journey is. But again, I want to go back to the frameworks and say that your people need to understand that they have to have the tools in place so they can scan the systems and demonstrate compliance. More often than not, I see people, they want to jump all the way to the end and say, give me my certification. And they haven't done the due diligence up front. And that can be a recipe for disaster, certainly for disappointment and wasted money and frustration.
Yeah. And what's interesting, right? And again, to kind of jump to PCI and HIPAA, it's like the conversation couldn't be more different. It's like, do you have to be PCI compliant? Yeah. Are you going to get fined out the wazoo? Yeah. HIPAA too. But is somebody knocking down your door, and are they going to prevent you from doing business? Sometimes no. And I will be honest, sometimes that sucks,
Until the
because
worst happens.
exactly,
So,
until you get
yeah,
hacked. Yep.
yeah, especially in the case of HIPAA. Um, I often say I haven't walked into a medical operation yet that was ever HIPAA compliant.
Ever.
And until we help them. But the interesting thing is what caused the problem is they ended up getting hacked, and then all of a sudden they had to demonstrate retroactively, oh, we are HIPAA compliant. And in one case, we had 18 medical offices in the Bay Area, and they were nowhere near HIPAA compliant. They were in trouble. Their licenses were about to get yanked. The insurance provider did not want to insure them, which was going to end them. Everybody wanted to see this HIPAA compliance statement. And when we got involved and we're looking at the systems, we're going, you're not there. And what they thought was going to take, 3 to 6 months ended up taking a full year, actually about a month over, maybe 13 months altogether. And it was grueling, but in the end, we got them their HIPAA certification and they were able to continue to operate. But I'll tell you, I was sweating for a while there.
It's a sad fact, Ed, that something like PCI and HIPAA are so easily overlooked by the end client and so easily not focused on. And again, it's like, and I say what I said before, because again, to do business with the government, you need CMMC. To do business with the government, you need FedRAMP. It's like non-starters. You can't even start working with them. To process credit card information, to handle PHI, they hope you have HIPAA and PCI compliance. And again, to Ed's point, just wait till somebody comes and knocks on your door and then starts to go backwards. What those fines look like, the legal actions that they could take against you. People go to business for it. But it's just so unfortunate in industry of people just saying like, yeah, I mean, I've been processing credit cards for 10 years. I'm like, oh, wonderful. What level of PCI are you? What do you do, a ROC? Do you do a SAQ? What's that? I'm like, excuse me? Like, oh yeah, I'm a medical practice. I have PHI. We have 10,000 clients, X, Y, and Z. I'm like, oh, wonderful. So show me your HIPAA compliance. You do an annual SRA? No. Like, wow, that's not good. That's not okay, right? So it's just it's really, it's a sad fact. And again, we could spend all day on these frameworks. And again, I just want to note, it takes time, it takes money, it takes aligning the right resources, it takes building your team. And from a business owner perspective, it is essential to build your team correctly the first time, and not by shortcuts, and not by quick fixes, and not by all in a box solutions. They don't exist. There are quicker ways to get to the finish line and more cost effective ways, but there are no cheats just don't exist, because the auditor, we're going to catch it. And then we're going to tell you all that effort and all that money you've spent, no dice, right? So any final thoughts here, Ed, or can we jump to the next slide?
I think we can jump to the next slide, but I would like to put in a plea: send your questions in. Eric and I love questions. We've allowed time for questions, so please send them in the chat. Okay, this next one. Why an MSP and an auditor relationship is essential. So when you get an MSP that is experienced with this and knowledgeable around this, working with a great company like ControlCase, we're able to work together. Sagacent is already trained. We understand the before mentioned compliance requirements. We understand the frameworks. We have the tools to go through and do the scan. It saves you time, saves you money, saves you frustration. We understand the typical systems that are already in place in your company because we're working with your industries. And in cases of co-managed IT is where we do a segment of the business for a larger organization that already has IT people, but typically the management recognizes, well, we don't have every skill we need. We need somebody to augment our team. We'll come in and do that. But the beauty is when you have an organization that's already got co-managed IT with us, it makes the journey of becoming compliant and demonstrating it so much easier because we've already got the tools, we've got the access to the systems. So that's a good thing. Eric, your thoughts?
Look, whether you have an MSP or not, which I think most organizations at any capacity have some sort of co-managed relationship with an MSP, whether you're buying products, they're fully managing things for you, they're co-managing things for you, they're offsetting hours, they're doing break fix, whatever that may be. At some capacity, most organizations I run into have an MSP. Also, not all, but most organizations have some sort of compliance requirement. I think the reason why Ed and I are here, and my message and my value to this world is like, I am trying my best to find good MSPs. We're not an MSP at ControlCase. We don't do that stuff, right? I'm not going to break fix. We're not going to update your computers. We're not going to manage your networks, sell these tools. It's not us, right? It's in our best interest to align to MSPs that are doing things correctly. And if we align to the MSP that do things correctly, and they're probably the first ones to say, whoa, 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 what's that? You guys need this. And whether they're able to handle it like somebody like Ed that can do these different things for you and close these gaps faster, or they're not, they're at least there to put the red flag up to say, whoa, 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 we got to do this. So it's in my best interest to build a team with them. It's in your best interest to make sure your MSP is building a team with me. And it's in all of our best interest to make sure as a group, we are communicating on a regular basis. And again, some MSPs might not be able to do all these things, and that's okay. But they need to then find an alignment to somebody that can do these administrative functions or compliance functions, if that is something that you guys need. And the reason for that is, you let them do what they do best. And again, in my world, I don't care how you guys get to the finish line, but you need to be ready for the finish line. And if you're not ready for the finish line, my part doesn't begin. Our people's times are wasted. It then costs everybody money. You then get pushed back in the queue. So again, I just want to, I think from a business leadership perspective, and even from a business leadership perspective for our partners, I mean, as a business owner, this is his company. He's not an IT guy. I mean, he is an IT guy, but like, he's a CEO, right? So yeah, he's a CEO. So like, his business function out, like, it's in his best interest to make sure, who am I partnering with, so that when my clients get to this finish line, I don't go, good luck, figure it out, find an auditor. I mean, we just dealt with this with another client where I got brought in. I had no idea they were working with an MSP that I knew. And then they told me, they're like, oh yeah, our MSP's okay. That's all good. No, they never told me the MSP's name. And I said, well, I've got people that I can connect you with. Well, if I'm Ed, I would want to say, hey, Eric, this is my end partner. And then you want us to come in as one brunt force. You don't want there to be any confusion. You don't want there to be any non-synergies. You want to make sure everybody on your team is playing for the same team and have the same interest in mind and are all thinking the same way and are all talking and communicating. As a business owner, there's less stress for you, less heartache for you, and ultimately it gets you to the finish line much quicker when everybody's communicating. And I just can't express how important it is for this relationship, and that is why Ed and I are here today.
Okay, well let's go through these slides. So this first one is a extremely simplified version of the process. It's kind of like a three-step process, but that's a little bit too simplistic. By the time we get to the third chart here, we'll be giving away the secret sauce on how we do what we do. The next slide is a little bit more detailed, and the beauty here is that we're talking about readiness. An assessment is going to be performed, gaps will be identified. Because of the partnership, remediating those problems is possible. Then you get ready for the auditor. And let's go to that third chart, which is the one I really like. This is another chart that I created. And what I tried to do here was give you the details and the major sections that you would go through if you worked with Sagacent and then ControlCase. The blue boxes are Sagacent, the green is ControlCase. So step one is an audit. We're going to come in and identify and document how you measure up against each of the line items in the framework. We're also going to document where the gaps are, what needs to be done in order to reach compliance and demonstrate that. Stage three, we're remediating issues. Things like continuous monitoring must be in place. You must be doing tests and annual reviews and employee training. Stage four, now we're getting ready to bring in ControlCase, and the MSP, hopefully it's us, is gathering that data in a way that's going to make that third party auditor happy. And then we shift over to Eric, and why don't you take the last two boxes?
Yes. So again, I feel like a broken record here, but I just think it's really important to keep beating the dead horse. All of these steps include funding. All of these steps include time. All of these steps require the correct team. Period. Right. So once you get to the audit, remember there's time that the assessors have to gather evidence. There's time that the assessors have to validate evidence. There's time that the assessors have to ultimately get you ready, align stakeholders, align scoping. That takes time. So there is no such thing as like, oh, I signed my audit, let's audit next week. Doesn't exist, right? Does not exist. And that goes for every framework. There's a pathway to get to the audit, no matter what the framework is. And then there's a pathway during the audit, and then there's a pathway post audit, right? And remember, each standard has their own post audit. Some are report driven, some are certification driven, some are uploading into government systems, some include us seeing you every so often, some include us giving you feedback on what you've done right or wrong, and then kicking you back to an ed, and then having you come back and go through our stage. So remember, each of these require time. Each of these require funding, and each of these require the correct party to make sure that you are doing these steps appropriately, so that again, if your goal is to get this cert from a business development perspective, a marketing perspective, your client's asking you to do it, you need to make sure that you can engage correctly with these end parties, and you're not going to lose this business. You have to follow these steps the right way. You have to do it with the right partner, and then you have to give your IT team the right resources to actually execute. You do not want to put your IT team on an island. You do not want to give, I can't tell you how many times I've seen a controller say, I'm responsible for IT. They told me if I don't get compliant, my job's on the line. And it's $2 million of contracts are on the line. Like, whoa, what? Get out of that immediately. We need to figure this out, or I need to connect you with the right person, because you will not. It's the recipe for disaster. So again, I think this slide and the previous slide are just so impactful to remind you from a business leadership perspective. This stuff takes time. You need to get in early. You need to plant the right seeds, and you need to do these steps appropriately so that when you get to the finish line, you don't have to restart and plant the seeds all over again.
And then I'll add the little line across the bottom, co-managed in GRC. Think of that as pavement. Companies that have a co-managed relationship, or an organization that's doing GRC, like maybe Sagacent, it speeds this entire process, because you've already got the right things in place to make this move much more quickly, which ultimately saves you money and time and frustration.
Yeah. Beautiful. All right. Ed, why don't you take it here? I think the slide speaks for itself, but
It really does, but maybe we could dig in a little bit. So the risks of inaction are often massive. I like to talk about stories, and we had a small mom and pop manufacturer down a few towns south of me. We got brought in, and they were a sub for a major DoD contractor, and they had pushed these requirements on them. Much to my surprise, I found out that months earlier, almost a year earlier, they were made aware that they needed to get this stuff done. They didn't, and they almost lost a client that was about 99% of their revenue. And it was just crazy. So, you can lose contracts, you can lose revenue opportunities. You're going to have increased audit costs if you don't engage the right people up front. And I see a lot of that. Reputational damage because you didn't have this stuff done, and then suddenly you have to act as a result of something going wrong. That is not a place you want to be. It's not good. You get end up with a lot of client and vendor upset. I've already mentioned before the case where insurance providers were refusing to underwrite the company because they couldn't demonstrate compliance. And then you get into regulatory and legal penalties. I don't even want to go there. Eric, you probably see a few more of these than I. Anything else you want to add?
Again, I think this slide is like one of those slides where it's like you leave it up and then you just go like this, and you're like, good. Everybody read these slides. Every word matters. Everything is true. There's nothing on here that's blasphemy, or nothing on here that's just, false. I think this is a good idea, or a good place for you to give me and you to give some live examples, right? So again, some of these frameworks, if you do not have it, say goodbye to your contract. There's lost revenue immediately, lost contracts. Then think about your supply chain, right? So like in CMMC, if you're not compliant, then all the subs that rely on you, they are no longer compliant, right? So there's organizational risk here, but then there's also supply chain risk. Ed talked about the act of being more reactive than proactive. Yes, most of my calls are reactive, but luckily they're reactive with some time. Again, there's no such thing as getting to the finish line quickly. So if you've committed to your client, I'll be SOC 2 and ISO compliant in the next 3 months. Good luck. It's not going to happen. Now, again, I can help coach you through maybe engagement letters, or hey, here's your readiness partner. Ed can help you give them a roadmap to completion. There's ways to get around it. But again, I cannot stress to you how important this slide is. There are real risks. Sometimes monetary risks, legality risks, PCI, HIPAA. You're never going to get breached. Yeah, right. It's not if, it's when. And when you get breached, they're going to go, show us. You want to be in the position to go here? I'm good.
We did it. We did everything right.
Yep, we didn't do it. We didn't miss a beat, right? So you do not. I cannot tell you how many businesses that do not exist anymore, or have just thrown money against the wall to say like, oh, well, I'm going to do it now. That's a bad place to be.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Before we go to the next slide, can you check and see if we have any new questions that we haven't answered?
Yeah, so we got a question about the ability to get online resources to know more about the regulatory frameworks. Happy to provide that. We do also have some links that I believe will provide in the invite, and if not, Ed and I will reach out to you separately. I think the biggest thing, and again, for all of you, whoever's making a decision, either someone is going to tell you you need a standard, and they're going to be very direct. You need X. X meets the mark. Again, you're handling credit cards, it's probably PCI. You're handling PHI, it's probably HIPAA. You're dealing with DoD contracts, it's probably CMMC. You're a cloud service provider that needs to sell into the government, or handling CUI, you need FedRAMP. You're selling into state and local, you need GovRAMP. Again, I can go on for days here on what the right and wrong places to do. But then there's also those organizations that are like, nobody's asking me for these things, but I cannot be at risk. And again, Ed had talked about CIS, CSF, 800, 171, 853. There are so many things that you could do as an organization to partner with your MSP, with an Ed, with a me, to get you to the finish line, audit or no audit, self-assessment or no self-assessment. You need to, as a business owner, make compliance decisions. The example I'll give before we jump, I remember years ago, I was newer to the cybersecurity world, and I remember I called this company and I got a hold of the CEO, and I was like, newer. I was like, whoa, hey, do you have any cybersecurity requirements? And they're like, no. I'm like, nothing. No. You don't handle any of this information. No. We're not at risk. We're not a target. We're good. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I guess I'll see you on the news, or I'll see you in a couple of years when you come back and you're begging to get compliant. Whether there's a regulatory requirement or not, there is never the wrong reason to not get compliant with something. And again, aligning to the right partner like an Ed, and making sure that you have the right technical controls and administrative controls in place, and that your team is actually following them. That's the other kicker. Just because you have a book in the bookshelf that says you do things, and just because you buy technology that show you do things, do not mean you do things, right? It is when an auditor comes in, or when anybody comes in, whether you get breached or not, they're going to go, well, show me what you're doing, show me what you're saying you're doing, and then show me you're doing it, and make sure that they align, and show me that it's an active, that you're doing it actively right now. Because again, just because you say you're doing it does not mean you're actually doing it, and just because you're doing it doesn't mean that you've shown that you do it. They have to align. And again, from a business owner perspective, you have to give your resources the right opportunities to make sure that none of these risks happen. And by giving them enough time, giving them enough money, and making sure you're doing your due diligence with the right people, the people you see on the screen here, you're setting yourself up for success.
Well, let's go to the last slide. And I want to invite all of our guests today. If you've got questions, Eric's contact information is there. My information is there. Please reach out. And if there are documents or white papers that we put together, we'll happily send those to you. We want to be of service. So please reach out. Any final comments, Eric?
No, I think this is good, Ed. I always appreciate talking with you again. You guys have to remember, in my world, it is essential to find business owners and MSPs like Ed that care. Because again, he is the lifeblood of your organization, helping you be IT compliant, or managing your IT at any capacity. And it's in my best interest to make sure that when you get to my doorstep, you say, not only do I have a competent MSP, my team feels ready and I feel up for this challenge. Let's go ahead and do this. I want to make sure, that's my biggest thing to get out of today, is to make sure no matter what compliance standard you're up against, give your team the right resources, give them the right runway, and build the correct team as early as you possibly can, and make decisions that way. Make your buying decisions, make your administrative decisions, make your technical decisions within an approved environment and within an approved scope with the right team. You will find success by doing that.
Eric, did I see another question slip into the chat?
Nope, just a thank you. Nothing.
Oh,
No
okay,
question.
that's great. Okay, well, folks, we've really enjoyed being here and helping you today. Do reach out. We'd love to help you.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. We'll end a little early today. Have a good one.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.